Hello, everyone. Luciano Oliveira, Oliveira Lawyers, and we are starting one more live stream. Now it's 12:30 Rio de Janeiro time. It's March 19, and let me check if we have anyone around suggesting topics for us to discuss. Now I'm taking a look here at our streaming platform, and I don't see our image. If you are participating in this live stream, please let me know if you can see our image, or maybe just the sound, or maybe nothing, right? Like, I need to know if we are working as it should. All right, Brazil Vibes. Good to see you, Brazil Vibes. Brazil Vibes. Bob Black, welcome. Welcome to the chat. Welcome to the live stream. Thank you for letting me know that things are working as they should. So let's proceed. Let's start by taking a look at the Brazilian news. Let's take a look at UOL as usually. Let's see if there is something of interest to the expat and foreign citizen community in Brazil. All right. No topics really addressing, or like other countries of interest. The only thing that may be interesting to foreign citizens is about the STF. The STF is the highest court in Brazil, kind of the Supreme Court in Brazil, and they are about to decide if they are going to allow the criminal lawsuit against former president Jair Bolsonaro. There is a lot of discussion. There is a lot of articulation from the right side of the political spectrum in Brazil, trying to remove Alexandre de Moraes from the Supreme Court. And there is a lot of complaining about Minister Moraes, right? About how he's dealing with politics in Brazil, and the idea here is that he is aligned with the left side of the political spectrum in Brazil, and kind of pounding on the right side, right? And there are many instances in which the Supreme Court has gone out of their way to not only adjudicate, but even start investigations on their own, and also again, not only adjudicating, but also taking steps that are not traditional of a court. So that's the nature of the complaint from the right side. And there is an ongoing battle, right? And the connection here is to the United States. Minister Alexandre de Moraes has had many disputes with Elon Musk in terms of the First Amendment, like in Brazil, if you will. Of course, like, we don't have the First Amendment, but the concept here is that there is a growing control of social media in Brazil. And not only that, the social media websites face high scrutiny and penalties or fines in the millions of dollars whenever they don't take down content, that is, again, being chosen by the Supreme Court, right? And that's the point here. So this is the news you can see. I'm sorry, like I just realized I'm not really showing the screen, but I was talking about specifically, right, the Supreme Court of Brazil. This is the news over here. And so this is just like an update in this kind of, a broader dispute between the right and the left, and with the Supreme Court clearly aligned with the left side of Brazil. So this is something, to pay attention to. Very interesting. That's going in Brazil as we speak. All right, let's go back to the chat and see what topics you guys are interested in discussing today. All right. Okay, we have Renata Escarano. All right, welcome, Renata. Boa tarde, Luciano. I always enjoy tuning into your show. I'm glad to hear that, Renata. I am a Brazilian living in the U.S. and did the saída definitiva do Brasil. Any recommendations on banks that offer CDE accounts? Yeah, so the CDE accounts, Renata, they are, and for those of you who don't know, right, Renata, of course, she knows because she's asking about, but the CDE is actually how Brazil and Brazilians, they call the non-resident bank account. And the CDE accounts, they are the correct bank account for either a Brazilian national living abroad or a foreign citizen who's not a resident in Brazil. So the CDE accounts, they are mandatory when you are a Brazilian living abroad, so you don't become or you don't remain as a tax resident in Brazil. And they are also highly advisable for foreign citizens who don't want to become a tax resident, right, for obvious reasons in Brazil. So you could have the CDE accounts. And Renata, there, it really depends on your relationship with the Brazilian banks. I can give you an example, right? A traditional banks offering the CDE / non-resident bank account in Brazil are going to be the ones regularly, right? Such as Itaú, Bradesco, and others. And the downside of those options is that they usually require you to have a lot of investment, right? So Itaú, for instance, if you have, 150,000 reais invested with the bank, they could potentially give you this a CDE account for free. However, if you're not keeping 150,000 reais, and this number changes, right? It depends on the state, it depends on the branch, it depends on the account manager. They could charge you up to 1,000 reais per month, just as a maintenance fee. For the account. Okay. Now there are some more nimble banks offering interesting CDE accounts, and then I'm gonna open up. This is where I go usually to talk about currency exchange and banking from abroad, and this is a link from the Brazilian Central Bank. And then here, the banks that I usually like to work with are going to be the banks specializing in currency exchange. Okay, so here to the right side, you have the categories. They are in Portuguese, and in Portuguese we're talking about bancos de câmbio, right? These are the bancos that or the banks that I like the most. Some of the banks, they do offer a CDE account, right? So for instance, let's take a look. Bancos de Câmbio, right? So this is a bank specialized in currency exchange. Moneycorp is a good one. We have many transactions with Moneycorp, but they don't offer the CDE account, right? Let's take a look at another one. This one we don't work with. We don't have a history of working with them. Let's continue to take a look. Brasa Bank. All right, so Brasa Bank, we work with Brasa Bank a lot, and Brasa Bank, they do offer the CDE account, okay? So my recommendation for you, it would be first to see if the banks with which you've been doing business, like, in the past when you were a resident in Brazil, if they would give you a CDE account for free. And if not, if they're going to charge you a lot of money, you can come here to this list and then check the Banco de Câmbio, right? And then work your way out in terms of, finding the best solution for you. We do have such a service. So for people who want to have a CDE account, ideally with no maintenance fee, when you hire our services, then we go through our list, we take a look at the banks, and we see whatever option we think that's going to work best for you. And we not only, recommend a bank, but we actually help you at least get the bank account set up. In some cases, there is a need for a connection to these banks, right? Like, meaning that if you just send an email or if you try to call, usually it doesn't work, right? Like, it's kind of like we say, coming from the street, like they don't know who you are. But when you have like a referral, right? Like they say, all right, like they're working with Oliveira lawyers, usually they are going to pay more attention, and chances are that you're going to get the account. And of course, like for the ones that we recommend, we, in addition to actually providing the referral, we're going to work with you until you have the account up and running. All right. I'm going to share the link here in our chat window so you can, go back to this list and see the options that you have, right? So I just shared the link over here. I hope that was helpful, Renata. All right. We have Ron Giovanoli. Hi, Ron. Hello, Ron Giovanoli. I want to immigrate to Brazil November or December this year under the retirement visa. Can you help in this matter? Absolutely, Ron. So we are a traditional provider of retirement visas to Brazil. Okay, we provide both the retirement visa done abroad. So if you are in the United States, we can help you, apply, prepare the documents, get the endless list of documents that are going to require an apostille. We can help you get the other requirements as well. And for some clients, they would prefer to apply while you're in Brazil. That's another traditional path, meaning that you could basically just come to Brazil under a tourist visa or a waiver. There is a waiver for U.S. citizens at least until April the 10th. After April the 10th, we don't know if the government is going to start to enforce the visa requirement or not. They're saying they will. And in this case, after April the 10th, then you will need, for instance, a tourist visa to enter Brazil. And then while you're in Brazil, you could apply for the retirement residency. Okay, that's a minor technical distinction. I don't know if it really matters, but, just to explain the differences. Whenever you get an immigration benefit for Brazil abroad through a consulate, this is going to be called a visa. And usually there's going to be a matching route when you are physically in Brazil. But when you get this benefit in Brazil, we don't call it a visa. We're going to call it a residency. Okay, so technically you can get the retirement visa in the U.S. or in most countries, or you can also come to Brazil and apply for the retirement residency. Okay, so retirement visa abroad, outside of Brazil, retirement residency when physically in Brazil. Brazil Vibes has a question. You may have answered this question. For those looking for a job in Brazil, is there an online job portal you recommend? Brazil Vibes, yes, there are many of them, right? Very interesting how fragmented this sector is in Brazil. A couple I would recommend, right? A couple I would recommend, in the past, I don't know, 20 years ago, okay, 20 years ago, we would use Cato, okay, Cato is still pretty traditional, all right? So Cato, it's a very traditional portal with jobs, like in Brazil. And as you can see, they have, some really big names like IBM, like Leroy Merlin. I would assume, like most of the, if you will, like the Fortune 500 equivalent list in Brazil, they are going to be using Cato. But they are not, I don't think they are as, let me show you the logo over here, Cato. I don't think they are the same thing they were like 20 years ago. And pretty much because of a major competitor nowadays, which comes not surprisingly from the United States, which Indeed, all right? So now Indeed has jobs in Brazil, right? And you can search for jobs in Brazil, and we use like for to find new employees in Brazil, Indeed, right? So the same Indeed that you use in the United States, they also have now a really meaningful operation in Brazil. Okay, so my recommendations, just so I don't give you like a laundry list, is for you to take a look at Cato and Indeed. I like Indeed a lot. Nowadays, we don't even, like use Cato anymore, just because Indeed is so, it's so easy to use, right? Like, I mean, the whole process of advertising a job position, of, reviewing, literally dozens and dozens of candidates. So I guess just like us, many other employers in Brazil would prefer working with Indeed. All right, let's take a look at what comes next. All right. Renata Escarano, I research Banco Rendimento, which has 150 reais annual fee for non-resident bank account. Have you heard anything about that? Yes, we do work with Banco Rendimento. So Banco Rendimento is actually one of our partners, and we do like their their account solution, right? They are completely virtual, so they don't offer many of the things that a more traditional bank would offer. On the other hand, they are usually on the cheaper side, Renata. So nothing wrong with Banco Rendimento. All right. Okay, Moses, nice to hear from you again. Good to see you here, Moses. Moses is showing up more often. Glad to see you over here, Moses. We have a Julian B. Welcome, Julian B. Julian B says, if I got married to a Brazilian a few months and got a residency based on that marriage, what would happen to my residency if I get a divorce? Right? So you marry, you get a residency, and then if you divorce, you're not gonna be entitled to the residency anymore, Julian. All right. Now, a very common follow-up question is going to say, all right, but how do they know, right? How do they know that I'm divorced, right? So many times they don't. And when you try to renew, that's when usually this matter is going to come to, to light. And usually they're not going to renew this thing like if you divorced, right? And if you lose your card and then you need to reapply to get a replacement card, guess what? That's when they usually ask you for evidence that you remain married. They also ask you for such evidence. For instance, if you try to apply for citizenship based on permanent residency in Brazil, they are also going to ask you for evidence that you are still married. Okay, now there is something that most immigration lawyers don't know about, most immigration firms in Brazil don't know about. there is a special track in Brazil for divorcees. So believe it or not, the Brazilian government took the time to provide a path to permanent residency for divorcees, okay? And it's not specifically addressing divorcees, but I would think that divorcees are the majority of applicants under this track. And the track goes like this. If you've been living as a permanent resident in Brazil for a certain period of time, and I don't recall exactly how long, I would guess 2 years. Let's pretend it's 2 years, right? If you have been living as a permanent resident in Brazil for 2 years, and for some reason you no longer qualify for that prior track, you're gonna apply for a new permanent residency under this fallback track, right? The fallback track is I was qualifying, but I no longer qualify, but I still want to live in Brazil, and therefore I'm applying for permanent residency, right? So in my head, whenever the legislators thought about that route, they were thinking, if someone comes to Brazil, they are living as a permanent resident based on marriage, and they divorce 2 years down the road. It's kind of not fair to the immigrant, to withdraw entirely their permanent residency, and therefore we're gonna allow them a track. We're gonna allow them a track to remain in Brazil. Okay, if you are interested in knowing more about this track, feel free to schedule a consultation, and then we can get into the details for this route. All right, we have Yokora. Good to see you here, Yokora. Bom dia, Luciano. Bom te ver também, Yokora. Raven Taylor, I have an account with Rendimento, and it is a decent account, and it has Pix, no debit card though. There you go, Raven. Thank you for sharing. I agree. Decent account indeed. Brazil Vibes, thank you so much. Brazil Vibes is buying me coffee. I really appreciate Brazil Vibes. Really nice to get some coffee from Brazil Vibes. That's super. I really appreciate that. Christopher is thanking Renata. Thank you, Renata, for asking the question about Banco Rendimento. I had the same question. Absolutely, pretty decent route, Christopher. We all agree on that. Moses travels. My message is long to read. My many two messages at once. All right, Moses. Looking forward to reading your message. Bill, it has been a while, Bill. Oi, Luciano, tudo bem? Don't forget to like. Thank you, Bill. Bill is always looking after us. Yes, if you hear, we have about 20 viewers as we speak. So if you could take a moment and like, if you enjoy our content, please do us a favor and just click the like button. All right, that's really appreciated. It's good for our business, and it does help other people just like you to find this content. All right, just click on the like button and get done with it. All right, I appreciate, Bill. I really appreciate. So just talking about a different subject while other people suggest topics for us to discuss here at the live stream. We have today a person in the São Paulo airport that was denied entry. He is a U.S. citizen, and the reason for his entry to be denied is because he had exceeded 6 months in the country in a given year, right? So for U.S. citizens, when you don't have like a special track such as a digital nomad or the retirement track, you are not allowed to stay in Brazil for over 6 months, right? So what's happening to this individual is that he stayed it looks like, right? Like I'm just sharing, like information. Of course, like I'm not sharing anyone's name, right? Like that wouldn't be ethical. But I'm just sharing as a heads up to other people who might incur in the same mistake, right? So if you happen to exceed 180 days and then you leave Brazil and then you come back before your immigration year resets, guess what? You're gonna be denied entry. Okay, so very important for you to keep track of your days, and if you're gonna be in any type of borderline stay in Brazil, I think you should secure the digital nomad or the retirement visas / residencies, or different routes. There is the student route. There is the real estate investment route. There are many routes for you to pick. Just don't try to stay, like play with the days, stay like, just 179 days, because sometimes you mess up with the counting. And that's when the Brazilian immigration is really strict. The Brazilian immigration is very, accommodating from so many different perspectives, but not with this one. If you've been in Brazil for 180 days, you leave Brazil and you try to come back, they do not allow you to enter the country, right? And so very important for you to understand that. All right, let me see if we have any new topics here to discuss. We have Moses. Moses says, I'm from a country that requires a visa to enter Brazil. I intended to buy a property worth 1 million reais to qualify for an investment visa, but last week you said that the visa is not guaranteed. This shows that there is a chance that I will not be able to take my funds or the property I buy back to my country if my investment visa is denied, because I need to buy the property first before I can apply for the visa. All right, Moses. So, about the visa not being guaranteed, Moses, this is like a standard in any immigration system, right? Just think, just like to give you a different perspective, think about the visitor visa for the United States. You probably know that there are literally like thousands of people that are going to wait like for 2 years, like in Brazil. Sometimes you wait for to get a visa to visit the United States, right? To go to Disney, you wait for 2 years. You're going to spend, I don't know, $500 to get the visa. If you're using a service, you're probably spending an additional $500 just for them to apply on your behalf. And if you are getting, let's say you're spending an additional $10,000, right? Like you spend a couple of weeks in Orlando, right? Like for a Disney trip. And I guarantee Moses, a large number of people, probably not the majority of people, but a certain percentage of those people, even though they have the visa, even though they spent $1,000 to get the visa and they spent $10,000 to travel to Disney, they are going to be denied entry. They are going to be denied entry as soon as they touch the United States, right? And this is just common knowledge, right? Like this is not a secret. I think everybody knows that, right? And this happens because a visa is never, or an application for a visa is never guaranteed. This is just an expectation, all right, Moses? So that's the point. Now, in our experience, Moses, we never had a real estate investor visa denied, okay? So these are the two pieces of information for you to consider. For certain, not guaranteed, and on the other hand, in our experience, never denied, right? Like so, but it's important to highlight that it's not guaranteed, particularly when the person has a high expectation, right? Like to change countries, they're going to sell all their stuff. So it's important for us to disclose those things so people understand that is never guaranteed. Now, in terms of taking your money out of the country, Moses, you can both buy a property without coming to Brazil, and you can also sell a property without coming to Brazil, right? So there is no such situation in which you buy the property and you end up stuck in this kind of scenario in which you are unable to take your money outside of Brazil. Brazil does allow foreign citizens to buy, particularly urban properties, very liberally, like meaning that they are not going to require that you have residency. You can just buy a property as a tourist or even under a waiver. And actually, you can buy a property even without setting foot in Brazil by using a power of attorney, right? Like it's not really common because, of course, people want to, decide on the property. People want to go through the experience of purchasing and using the real estate property in Brazil. But the reality is, like, there is no requirement for you to be even in Brazil to buy real estate property. And that would be the same thing for you to sell. So in theory, you could, for some people who are unable to get a visa to Brazil, they could buy the company, they could buy the property remotely, they could apply for the investor visa, and in the event they don't get the investor visa, they can sell that property remotely just like they bought the property in the first place. All right, Moses, I hope that was helpful. We have Bob Black. Bob Black, do you have a list of health insurance companies that can provide coverage for a 66-year-old male? Bob, we don't keep this list, and we don't keep on purpose, right? Like I personally, right, and not surprisingly, as a consequence, the firm as a whole, we don't recommend that you buy any of those health insurances because they are what we call for gringo health insurances, meaning they are unreasonably expensive and they are not accepted by the Brazilian health service providers, right? If you need health insurance to qualify for any of these routes in Brazil, usually our recommendation is going to be for you to apply while physically in Brazil. Because when you apply while physically in Brazil, guess what? You don't need health insurance, right? So that's the case, for instance, for the retirement route, for the digital nomad, right? If you apply for the retirement visa in the United States, let's say through the Brazilian consulate in Houston, Brazilian consulate in Miami, Brazilian consulate in New York, Brazilian consulate in San Francisco, Brazilian consulate in Los Angeles, any of those consulates, they are going to demand health insurance accepted in Brazil for you to get the visa. However, for the same thing, if you apply physically in Brazil, guess what? You don't need the health insurance, right? Pretty weird distinction. I don't know the reasoning behind that. Maybe they say, well, since you are in Brazil, I'm not going to worry about health insurance. Maybe that's the reason. It's weird. But it is exactly what I told you. If you apply abroad, yes, health insurance is going to be a requirement. If you apply while you're in Brazil, then you don't need health insurance, right? And then maybe your follow-up question is going to be, all right, Luciano, I hear you, but are you suggesting that at age 66, I shouldn't have health insurance in Brazil? No, that's not what I'm suggesting at all, Bob. What I am suggesting is that first you're gonna get the R&M card, right? First you're gonna get the R&M card through the process of obtaining a residency in Brazil. Let's say the retirement residency in Brazil. You come as a tourist to Brazil. You apply for the retirement residency in Brazil, physically in Brazil, without health insurance. And as soon as you get your resident card, that's when you're going to buy health insurance. Because with the resident card, you're going to be able to buy the same health insurance that I have, that we Brazilians have. And our health insurance, of course, is going to be much more affordable than whatever you get in the United States. and better, you're gonna be able to use the health insurance to get services without having to pay in advance. Okay, so you basically get your health insurance for cheap, and you can use whatever you go. All right, Bob. So that's the strategy we recommend here. This said, there are people say, "Oh, I don't care. I still want to apply in the U.S." And then we don't have a recommendation for health insurances because of our approach to the application strategy, if you will. All right. So Ronnie Dio, good to see you, Ronnie. Always good to see Ronnie. Ronnie is always here supporting our channel. Ronnie is asking, do you think in the future they will make a path to permanent residency through the digital nomad? No, Ronnie, I don't think at all, right? I may be mistaken, but the trend is actually the opposite, right? The trend is for the digital nomad to be always, like a low-hanging fruit, not many strings attached, but on the other hand, it shouldn't give you access to anything, right? That's a concept, that's an understanding that you see across different governments. And I can tell you, for instance, like for Portugal, right? Like, I mean, Portugal is being pretty much invaded by US citizens. And if you check the immigration portal for U.S. citizens trying to, immigrate to Portugal, you're gonna see something surprising. They have removed the D8. The D8 is like the digital nomad visa for U.S. citizens wanting to stay in Portugal for the long run. So this was available until last week. If you check it today, you're not gonna find the D8 available anymore. They are still offering a digital nomad visa to Portugal, but that's for a 1 year stay, right? So the idea here is that the D8 would give you access to 2 years, and then you could renew for an additional 3 years. And then in Portugal, you would be entitled to either permanent residency or even citizenship. A pretty big deal, right? And then Portugal said, you know what, we don't like digital nomads, right? These folks, they just come here, they are loud. Yes, they come with lots of US dollars, but they are loud. They don't have a real connection to the culture. They are just here causing rentals to skyrocket. We don't want the digital nomads anymore, right? So Brazil, on the other hand, is such a huge country, right? Both geographically and in terms of population. So Brazil doesn't really feel the same pain, even though there is also like a huge number of U.S. citizens coming to Brazil under the digital nomad. But the point is, a digital nomad, particularly from the Brazilian immigration perspective, it should not represent a track for something more long-term. It's just the way the digital nomad is seen by government authorities, if you will. Okay, Ronnie, so that would be my guess. Now, I could be wrong, right? Like, you never know if President Lula decides, you know what, this digital nomad is working so well. I want these people to stay here forever, spending big bucks in Brazil. Like, he could do that, right? And who can tell what a politician will decide in the future? But if the decision was to be technical, I think the digital nomad would never lead to permanent residency, Ronnie. All right, we have another question from Ron. My fiancée wants to visit me in the U.S. She has a Brazilian passport, but she needs a visa. She's afraid she'll be denied. Do you deal with the cases? Ron, yes, we do assist with the application, but if she's afraid she is going to be denied, there is a good chance she will, right? And like there are different ways to say so, but I'm going to try not to sugarcoat the reality. I think the immigration officers at the U.S. consulates in Brazil, they have a pretty well-defined profile for those who should get a visa. They should be at least like middle class and above. they should have, really solid links to Brazil, meaning, like they are, like doing a law degree and they are in their third year of law degree, or they are working for Microsoft and they've been with Microsoft for 10 years. This is the profile of people the U.S. consulate wants to approve. And if people depart from this type of profile, guess what? The U.S. consulate will traditionally deny visas to, those folks, right? So if your fiancée, if she's afraid she's going to have her visa denied, it is probably because she knows about that, right? Like this type of information is naturally exchanged among Brazilians. And when people, they don't have like the ideal set of requirements to get a visa, most probably than not, they are going to be denied. Right now, I'm not saying I know about specifics of your fiancé. I'm just saying that whenever a Brazilian is afraid of being denied, is because they know up front that their profile is not ideal for a visitor visa, okay? Now, remember, Ron, there is the so-called K7, the fiancé visa, which would allow your fiancé to get a visa to visit you in the United States for up to 90 days. The fiancé visa, also known as K7, it's K1, is actually designed exactly to allow foreign citizens to bring a romantic partner to the U.S. and see how the relationship would work while in the United States. You have 90 days to marry. If you don't marry, then the Brazilian national needs to go back. And if you marry, then from the fiancé visa, you're gonna move to the green card, and that's something we handle over here, Ron. And of course, there are other strategies that we could have discussed in a consultation. All right. Okay, Bob Black, I'm talking about insurance companies in Brazil. All right, Bob. So let's say if you are already in Brazil, but remember, you need the card, right, Bob? So I'm going to assume you have the card already, okay? And there are many health insurance companies. Let me see if I can pull up a list here. Let's take a look. All right, Bob. So here, this is all right. It's not going to allow me to show. Okay. Let me see if I can get another list. I was going to show you the largest operators. I got another list here. All right. So I'm going to tell you the names. And as you can see here, the states like in which they are based are going to be usually São Paulo, Rio de Janeiro. There is one based in Ceará, right? We have a very strong presence in Ceará as well. Notre Dame is a very traditional one. Bradesco, also one of the most traditional and solid banks in Brazil. Amil was super solid in the past. They've been facing some issues. SulAmérica is another traditional name. Porto Seguro, very, very solid. Okay, another great choice, right? So I'm going to share this link over here, Bob, and then you can take a look yourself. For our clients, if you're using our services, let's say if you are applying, for instance, for the retirement visa, digital nomad, real estate investor, we actually have an agent who works with all of those health insurance providers, and she's going to actually work to get you the best deal. But like she has limited capability, and therefore she's going to work only with our clients. Okay, but I'm going to share the list over here, Bob, so you can take a look later on by yourself. All right, these are some of the largest providers of health insurance in Brazil. Ronnie, all right, actually it is Yokora question. If a couple of friends wanted to pool their money together to purchase a property under the Golden Visa. If the total purchase price is 1 million reais, can each person get the residency? Not really, Yokora. It should be 1 million reais per person. Okay. Now there is a potential workaround. It's never guaranteed, right? So it's more like a on a best effort basis. This is going to be for families, right? So sometimes we see families who want to come to Brazil. They are unable to invest 1 million reais per person. What they are going to do is like this: the head of the family is going to get the visa. So they buy a property for 1 million reais. This is going to entitle the head of the family as the investor visa holder, and then the others are going to piggyback. They are going to piggyback on the head of the family under the family reunification visa. Okay, and I say it's never guaranteed because it's never guaranteed. Just like I was telling Moses, right? Nothing is guaranteed. But I think the Brazilian immigration, they have a little some incentive to deny the piggybacking type of application, because you are kind of circumventing the system. If you look at the regulation says each person should be buying 1 million reais, right? So you could buy a property for 5 million reais, and then this property would allow 5 people to apply. But if you are buying a property for 1 million reais, from the Brazilian government perspective, this should be good for a single applicant. Now, in our experience, still, if you have a very solid profile, the Brazilian immigration will most probably grant the family reunification visas for the family members, as long as the family members are financially dependent on the the main applicant, right? Okay. So let's see what else we have. But that was an interesting question, Yokora, right? That's a somewhat common question we have here at the firm. We have a Chigo Dyke. Welcome, Chigo. Welcome back. I think it's the second time Chigo is showing up. Glad to see you again, Chigo. Just asking again if you could, any and all of you, click that like button. That helps our business and helps other people find our content. Just 14 likes, and we have like 46 people who attended so far our live stream. So I really appreciate if you could like our content. But let's move ahead. And yes, Chigo is confirming second time. Yes, Chigo, glad to see you back. Can I apply for the retirement residency while on vacation in Brazil? Yes, Chigo. So that's actually our strategy, right? Most of our applicants, they are already in Brazil. If you are spending vacation time in Brazil, guess what? You're not going to need the health insurance, in order for you to apply for the retirement residency. The only, challenge is that you're going to need to get an apostilled FBI background check if you are from the U.S., but we can usually assist you with that. And we like to work with applicants before they travel to Brazil. So let's say if Ichigo is planning, to come to Brazil like in June, ideally we would start working with Chigo now. So when he comes in June, he would have all the documents prepared up front while he's still in the United States, and then he brings the documents with him, and we help him file in Brazil. And this works really well, particularly, again, when we are able to start the process with enough notice, right? Like some people, and that's kind of surprising to me, is not really, the traditional style of U.S. citizens. Some people, they're going to contact us like 30 days before their time is over in Brazil, meaning they cannot stay any more time in Brazil. They say, well, I just have 30 days. Can you help? That's not really ideal, because in 30 days, that's usually the timeline that you're gonna need just to assemble the documents, right? And then we need to review. There is a need to translate the documents. So 30 days is usually not enough. We do have some strategies to get you through for the timeline, right, that we develop whenever you hire our services. But the timeline, ideally, you're going to start at least a couple of months working with us before the target date for your application, if you will. All right, we have Julian B. What if I got a divorce and have a company set up in Brazil? It is small but working. So the company, Julian, there is a route for you to secure residency in Brazil as an investor in a company. The traditional amount for the investment in a company based residency is going to be 600,000 reais, a little bit more than 100,000 US dollars. We don't handle, right? Many of you know about that. Like, I mean, I said so many times before here in our live streams, we don't provide services for, investor visa based on companies just because we think that the Brazilian framework for you to run a business is not ideal for foreign citizens. And when you commingle immigration with business in Brazil, usually is not a good mix. It could work for some people. If I had to guess, I would say maybe it's a good match for 15% or 20% of the foreign citizens, but we don't want to work with that because if you hire us for this service and down the line, you realize how harsh, the business environment is in Brazil, you may want to shoot the messenger, right? Like we've been for 20 years in this space, we know how things work, okay? And people are usually going to want to shoot the messenger. Why would you allow me to set up a business in Brazil and even worse, to attach that business to my immigration journey, right? So you need to create a bunch of jobs, and then you hire people, and then you fire people. People are going to sue you to get additional money. Taxation is all over the place. You need to pay an accountant every single month. You have a bunch of document obligations that you would never think of when in the United States, right? So there are so many points of pain that we say, listen, we don't want to touch this thing. But listen, Julie, if you have a company in Brazil, just like you said, this is small but working, there could be a route. Again, as long as you bring money from abroad, right? Like, I mean, just because you have a company, that's not enough reason. You need to bring money from abroad to invest in this company, if you will. There is the 600,000 reais route. There is also the 150,000, which is substantially reduced. So we're talking about roughly 30,000, but this is like for something that's innovative. So if you're bringing a new technology from the United States, in theory, you could reduce the investment from 600,000 to 150,000 reais, if you will, Julie. But again, for some people, maybe 15%, 20% of the foreign citizens running a business in Brazil could be interesting. Like, I mean, listen, I don't want to convey the wrong idea. There is a bunch of people making a ton of money in Brazil, right? Brazil is a huge market, right? Like we are one of the 10th largest economies in the world, right? Like a huge economy. And there are no shortage of people making a ton of money in Brazil. I just don't think that, mixing it up, immigration with business is a good idea, right? That's my point over here. I'm not saying that you cannot make money in Brazil. You can actually make a lot of money as long as you have a stomach to go through all the challenges we have in Brazil from a business perspective. All right. So we are kind of moving towards the end of today's live stream. Maybe we're going to take an additional question or two. We're not going to have a live stream this Sunday, but we do have a live stream already scheduled already scheduled for the next Wednesday, which should be the 26th. All right, so we're gonna be together again on Wednesday, the 26th, same time, 12:30 Rio de Janeiro time. Okay, we're not gonna be meeting this Sunday. Let me see if we have any last question, any last topic of interest to our participants. In the meantime, I wanna thank again Brazil Vibes. Brazil Vibes bought me coffee today. I'm very happy. I love coffee. I guess you guys love it as well. Most people, it does not matter where they are from. They love coffee. Coffee is very traditional in Brazil. It was one of the most important sectors of the Brazilian economy in the 19th century. Okay, in the 19th century. So pretty important sector in Brazil. We Brazilians, we are pretty big in coffee. We actually drink coffee all day long. Something that is very different in terms of the coffee we drink. Like in the United States, people like to drink those, huge cups of coffee, and naturally the coffee is not as concentrated. We like to joke that for us Brazilians, a U.S. coffee is like tea. It's not like real coffee. In Brazil, you're gonna see that like the sizes are pretty small, but we usually have espresso, right, which is a pretty strong concentration of coffee, if you will, and that's why we need to have really short doses of coffee, but we have it throughout the day. Some people, they have even, like I have a friend, and that's really amazing to me. Like, he drinks coffee before going to bed. I cannot. I'm really high sensitive to coffee. So if I drink coffee, late afternoon, that could mess up with my sleep. But this friend of mine, like it could be 10 p.m., it could be 11 p.m. He drinks like a large cup of coffee and then he goes to sleep, right? So go figure. All right, we have here the last question for the day. It comes from Ellen. Hello, I am a dual Filipino-American citizen with an American employer and bank statements in the U.S. Can I apply for the Brazilian digital nomad with my Filipino passport? Yes, Ellen. There is nothing precluding you from applying for the digital nomad. If you are in the United States, right? Naturally, you're gonna need to show your U.S. passport. Maybe the Brazilian consulate is gonna say, well, if you are in the U.S., you are supposed to apply with the U.S. passport, okay? And that's an interesting question. I cannot tell you if the consulate would preclude you from using the Filipino passport. But what I can tell you is, if you come to Brazil, it's going to depend on which passport you're using to enter. Let's say if you use the U.S. passport to enter, then this would be the passport that you should be using when applying for the digital nomad residency in Brazil. And so you need to match the passport that you're using to enter the country with the passport you're going to use for the application while you're physically in Brazil. Now, at the consulate level, there is more discretion in terms of what the the consular officer is going to decide. But in my head, like if you are applying from the United States, you're going to either use your U.S. passport, and if you try to use your Filipino passport, they're going to say, well, but are you a permanent resident, right? Because that's like the fallback option. I am a Filipino, but I am a legal resident in the U.S., and therefore I can apply through the Brazilian consulate in the U.S. using my Filipino passport. But you don't have a resident card, right? You are actually a citizen, and that's even better than a resident. But in my head, because you don't have this combination of Filipino/resident card, they would say, you know what, like if you are a U.S. citizen and you are in the U.S., guess what? You should use the U.S. passport. That would be my reasoning, but maybe, again, the consular officer is going to think different. So who can tell? All right. So I want to say thank you to everyone today who came to our live stream. And again, we're going to be together on March the 26th. If you come to YouTube and you click on our channel under the live content, you're going to see a button, Notify Me. If you click on the Notify Me button, that's going to be pretty good for you because guess what? When our live stream is starting, you're gonna get a notice, and you're not gonna forget about showing up over here. So thank you all again, and I wish you a blessed rest of your day.